Hi everyone, I'm Julia Bone, Senior Performance Nutritionist and Registered Dietitian for High Performance Sport New Zealand, and this podcast is a collaboration between Row New Zealand, High Performance Sport New Zealand and Drug Free Sport New Zealand. In this episode, we're going to be talking about supplements. Although they're common in sport, supplements do pose a risk to all athletes. Only last year, British sprinter CJ Uja famously lost his relay team's Olympics silver medal after he tested positive because of a supplement he took was contaminated with a banned substance. We're here today to talk about what athletes and whānau can do to help reduce risk and protect clean sport. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to our guest, Drug Free Sport New Zealand's new Athlete Commission member, Ruby Tew. Welcome, Ruby. On this podcast. So for everyone watching or listening, they probably already know who you are, but for just in case anyone doesn't, could you just give us a bit of a background about you, such as when you started your rowing career, for instance?
Thanks, Julia. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a real privilege to be here. And definitely I'll give you a little bit of background. So my rowing career began at Queen Margaret College in Wellington. We were a very small rowing school, and I'm sure most people in New Zealand will know about windy Wellington. So we probably only rowed once or twice every fortnight through my high school years. But we did do a lot of erging. So often third 500 was sort of our bread and butter. So my Māori success was a bronze medal in the under-16 double. And from that, I made the North Island team in my final year of high school. And after that, the New Zealand junior team in 2011, where we went on to win a bronze in the women's quad in Bulgaria at the Junior World Champs. After that, I sort of took a bit of a different step to most rowers in the pathway, and I decided to attend Otago University to get started on my business degree. And this meant that I turned down under 23 trial 2 years in a row, which was a tough decision to make, but actually was a really great decision for me. I still rowed with the Otago Uni crew. I met some of the friends that I will have for the rest of my life. And I spent 2 years sort of focusing on having an identity that wasn't just rowing to set me up for life after sport. Fingers crossed that was going to be a long way away at the time. But so then in the summer of 2014, I was invited to be part of the New Zealand Summer Squad. And I made the Women's 8 in 2015, which was just like such a fabulous experience. My first time in the elite team, and we became the first ever New Zealand Women's 8 to qualify for the Olympics. So that was pretty cool. And then following that, I was in the New Zealand team for 7 years. I competed in the Rio Olympics in the Women's 8 and the Tokyo Olympics in the women's quad. And sort of, I guess, the final part of my rowing career was actually in the UK. I had applied to complete my master's degree at the University of Cambridge in England. And so I flew straight from the Tokyo Olympics to London, which was a weird experience, to be honest, because it was obviously the COVID Olympics and there were 4 days of rowing finals. But once you'd finished your final, you had to leave the village within 48 hours. So my final was on the first day, which meant that I didn't actually get to see my teammates compete, and I watched the men's, women's 8s and singles races from the arrivals lounge at Heathrow Airport, which was a really weird experience and a little sad, but it was it is what it is. So I was in Cambridge for all of the last year. Was a really cool experience as well. I got to finish my master's degree, but I also got to be a part of the Cambridge and Oxford boat race, which coincidentally was actually raced last night for the 2023 year, and Cambridge did a clean sweep, so pretty proud of them as well. We won our boat race against Oxford in record time. And I guess if it was last night, it means that I've been a retired rower for a year now, so mixed emotions, but yeah.
Oh wow, such an interesting to hear your background. Thanks so much for sharing that, Ruby, and I love how you've gone from Cambridge, New Zealand to sort of Cambridge, as well.
Confusing.
So moving on, so supplements are pretty common in sports, but some of our listeners might not be aware that supplements aren't actually that well regulated in terms of the ingredients that they contain, or that the ingredients that they have, whether they match that they contain are listed on the label or not, and if that's matching, which means that there's a risk of contamination by by banned substances. So this means that when athletes need to make informed decisions about whether or not to take supplements. So what do you, Ruby, would have been your first experience with supplements and managing sort of those decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was pretty lucky in this regard. My first experience with supplements was actually when I had my first real nutrition talk. We had the Rowan New Zealand Nutritionist at the time come down and speak to the regional team that I was a part of in Blenheim about sports nutrition. And I guess with that came a little bit about supplements and risks that are associated. And so after this, I actually started using protein post-training. When I was in a rush, I couldn't get home quickly before heading to work. But I was really lucky that I'd had that education. So I kind of understood the risks and I knew how to select my supplements and sort of make sure that I was ticking all the right boxes as I went through that process.
That's great. And are there any lessons that you've learned along the way in terms of how to make those decisions around whether to use a supplement or which one to use if you did need to choose to use one?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the most important lesson from my point of view is to make your own decision. So like, I mean, there are a lot of social media trends and you have friends and teammates who will be using supplements. So just following what they're doing is not necessarily a smart move. It's really important that you understand when you're making your decision why you are taking a supplement, like what is the benefit you are searching for? Could you have gotten it from just food itself? And if the answer is no, and you still want to be taking a supplement, that's totally okay. But just making sure that you understand where it's come from and the risks you face in taking it. So it's all about education and just being really thorough all the way throughout the process.
Yeah, I think that's really important. As you said, having the education and being thorough, knowing what it is you're taking. Because as part of the anti-doping test, you have to list any supplements that you're taking at the time. So, and speaking of that, sort of the anti-doping testing, do you have any sort of funny experiences? Was it daunting your first time? Any recollections that kind of stand out for you from having to do that process as part of supporting clean sport?
Yeah, I mean, nothing too dramatic, which is probably a good thing, but it definitely was really daunting the first few times. It's a really unusual situation to be in when you have to sort of have someone watch you go to the bathroom. And often when I'm talking to people about rowing and sport, and we come on the conversation of sort of testing for drugs in sport, it's a part of the process of my sporting life that people are really interested in, and they sort of can't believe that that's the way it happens. But so I guess it's important just to like know what the process is going to be in terms of funny times. I remember a time sort of when I was early on in my rowing career where I had sort of provided the first part of my sample, but it wasn't enough. You have to reach a certain quantity of liquid. So myself and the drug testing personnel had to sit at home with my sort of half full bottle in front of us because you're not allowed to let it out of your sight once you start, which is a really strange and funny situation to be in. But yeah, I got there eventually, and I think you kind of do just have to laugh and not feel too embarrassed because it happens to everybody. And also they're so used to it, that is not abnormal for them as part of the process. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And then if we were to go back to just the topic on supplements, what advice would you give to any young rowers or athletes if they're thinking about using them, having to remember that they're responsible for what they put into their bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess a little the same as I said before. I would sort of just don't take it just to take a supplement. It would be make sure you understand the benefit you are trying to get from supplementation. Where does that fit in the overall picture of your sporting career? Are there, other things you can do that are going to make a bigger difference, first of all? And then I guess whether you could get the same benefit from food. And if the answer is that you still want to take a supplement, then again, making sure you know where it comes from. Is it batch tested? Do you trust the source? Do you understand the risks you are taking? Because at the end of the day, we are responsible for the supplementation that we use. You can't pass the blame off to the nutritionist or to, I don't know, your parents who gave you a protein powder or things like that. So yeah, just do your own research, ask a lot of questions. There's some really useful resources on the Drug Free Sport website around supplement decision making. So just sort of be careful is what I would say.
No, that's great advice. And you've mentioned a few times just about using the supplement that's batch tested. So just to clarify on that for people who might not be aware, that there are certain companies that test specific brands, I suppose, of supplements to see if they've been, just to make sure that they're not contaminated with banned substances, I suppose, and it just helps to minimize that risk. It doesn't take it away completely, but it's one step that you can show that you've done yourself to minimize that risk in that part of that decision-making tree. So, which is great to see that that's a step that you've taken in the past. And there's a lot of information on social media at the moment. Any tips or suggestions on how to navigate, what posts might have good or reliable information when it comes to supplements?
Yeah, totally. Like, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's about just doing your research and making sure you trust the source of information. If you see a supplement on Instagram or another kind of social media platform, do you trust the person who is posting it? Is it are they being paid to promote that supplement, or are they associated with the company anyway? It's definitely okay to find supplements online. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do think you have to check and double check why they're being promoted, and then do they come from a reputable source? Often you can just click the link for the supplement website, have a look to see if they offer batch testing, which going back to batch testing is always a good idea. I think I've had that drilled into me over 10 years of brewing. Maybe read some online reviews. You can check ingredients online. This, again, I go back, there's that really great supplement decision making guide on the Drug Free Sport website, so that's totally worth a read. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're the one responsible, so you have to be really comfortable about what you're putting into your body, and that's not going to return you a positive test at any point.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So within High Performance Sport New Zealand, Rower New Zealand and Drug Free Sport New Zealand, we sort of talk about this food first approach. What does that mean to you?
Great question. I love the food first sort of mentality. I have kind of mentioned it before. So I guess for me, it's just understanding that you can get a lot of the same benefits that you are looking for from supplementation from food itself, just by including a variety of different foods, cooking well, making sure you eat enough. There's often a route where you don't need to add supplementation. Definitely for some parts of, I'm sure for some parts there might be more of a need, but food can do a lot of the job itself, I guess. Supplements are expensive, it saves money. You also it just allows you to avoid a little bit of the risk. And I guess I'm wondering if you, Julia, might have a slightly more scientific way to describe food first, because I don't know if I did that justice.
No, you're definitely on the money there. We always look to see what you can get from food first, from your diet, from your meals. Supplements by the definition are there to sort of aid or support your food intake or nutrition intake, not to replace it. So that's always the way I sort of look at it. And as you mentioned, you could get a whey protein powder, or it's a lot cheaper just to also drink a large glass of milk as well. Totally. So it's just looking at those strategies and seeing, at times they might be appropriate to include some supplements, whether it's because there's a time pressure, you've got a lot of amount of training happening at that time, or is there a way that we can look to get it through food first? And that's sort of what that means.
Cool.
Great. And speaking of food first, what was your go-to breakfast before training made up of?
So my go-to was probably either Wheat Bix or toast. I definitely went through some big phases in my rowing career, but I think, I used to love 4 Wheat Bix with banana, honey, and lots of full-fat milk. Then I also loved banana and honey on toast. So maybe banana and honey is my sort of theme. But coffee, lots of coffee.
Very good. And staying on the food first trend, I've heard you're quite the cook. So is there a meal that you make that makes you feel great or full of energy or brings back some good memories?
Definitely. I mean, I love to cook. It's definitely a passion of mine, and a crewmate, Lucy Spores, and I actually created a catering company to sort of cater for sports teams like rowing crews who were coming from South Island to compete at Māori or from up north, which was a cool experience as well. I think if I'm trying to pick a favorite, one of our go-tos for those school camps, and then even for ourselves all the time, was a homemade chicken and veggie pie, where we'd sort of make the crust with fresh breadcrumbs and lots of herbs and butter. It was delicious.
Yeah, it sounds really delicious too. Great. You've recently joined the Drug Free Sport New Zealand Athlete Commission, which is all about bringing that athlete voice onto the table. And so what drew you to this role?
A number of things, really. I guess I've like from my background, you know that I'm now based in London, which is at least 26 hours away from New Zealand, which feels like a long way from home. And I know that I would not have been able to achieve what I achieved in rowing without the support network of friends, family, coaches, teammates, and so many more people. So I was kind of looking for a way to stay involved back in the New Zealand system, even though I was living in London, and to give back to a community that helped me so much over the years. And then I could kind of couple this with a passion for clean sport and that love of cooking and food first approach. So I mean, I saw that the Drug-Free Sport Commission was looking for athlete members, and it sort of felt like the perfect place for me. I mean, my experience with supplements and drug-free sport over the years has been relatively straightforward, probably due to really good and consistent education over the years around supplements and everything else. And then I guess I was just cautious the whole way through. So yeah, I know though that it can be a very tricky and scary space to navigate. So if I can help younger athletes, the next generation of New Zealand sports stars, feel more comfortable around their supplement decisions, then I would consider that a really good success.
That's great. And if there was, someone that was younger or a current athlete who wanted to get in touch with the Athletes Commission at Drug-Free Sport New Zealand, how are they able to do that?
You can definitely contact us by finding any of us on social media, or you can go to the Drug-Free Sport website and find the email address to contact us there too. I think it is ac@drugfreesport.org.nz. And we'd love to hear from you. We are definitely here to represent the athletes and make sure that we bring the athlete voice to the table around the education and testing process in NZ. So, we want it to be the best it can be and the best in the world. So definitely don't be shy if you have any questions or problems or thoughts around it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And it's great to know that the Athletes Commission is so open to hearing from athletes and about all the easy ways that they can get in touch and
yes,
provide
definitely
feedback as well.
Please reach out.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all I've got today. Thank you so much for your time, Ruby, and for sharing your experiences and perspectives on the supplements. Definitely took away that education and that support that you received played a big role in that.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. It's been nice to chat about it, and look forward to hearing from some younger athletes, any questions they might have.
Yeah. And to those listening and watching, thank you for tuning in. And just a reminder, if you'd like to contact the Athletes Commission, the email is ac@drugfreesport.org.nz. Or if you have any questions about this podcast, please email them through to podcast@rowangnz.kiwi.